Blanca, the last and largest remaining Morisco village in 1613. Blanca was the last and most important Morisco village in Spain in 1613. All the Moriscoes had to leave the country in 1609. The residents of Blanca, one of the 6 villages that belonged to the Ricote Valley, could postpone the expulsion until 1613. However, at the end of the year 1613 the sad announcement came that the Moriscoes of the Ricote Valley also had to leave the country. This was finally the case on December 13, 1613. About 75% of the population of 1,000 inhabitants went on foot to the port of Cartagena, where the Moriscoes had to be embarked. A small portion of the 1,000 inhabitants had escaped and withdrawn in the high mountains of Ricote. After 10-15 years, many came back. Finally, around 45% of the former inhabitants of Blanca and the Ricote Valley could continue staying in their territories. These people married in the course of time with the Christians, and today Blanca is one of the most pious villages in the province of Murcia. This movie shows you the old Morisco neighborhood and the small winding streets that ran to the castle, and the very old houses of centuries ago. From 1997 to 2005 I have written 2 thick books in Spanish, each of 1,000 pages, on the history of Blanca. The first book of 1997 covers the general history of Blanca from the 8th to the 17th century, and the second book of 2005 deals extensively with the expulsion of the Moriscoes of Blanca between the years 1609 and 1614 with many pedigrees. In another Spanish book of 2007, I discuss in detail the Morisco Ricote, whose servant is described as in his book of Don Quixote. This book was published by Cervantes in 1615. Here, I hypothesize that the Morisco Ricote actually tribes from the Ricote Valley and not from the birthplace of Cervantes, which was claimed by all historians. Meanwhile, my hypothesis was confirmed in 2010 by Professor Marx Francisco Villanueva of the Harvard University. Finally, my dissertation of 2008 is taking some 500 pages and deals extensively with the Ricote Valley in the 14th century. The history of Blanca, we can simply indicate on the following way. After invading the Moors in Spain in the year 711, they settled in the same century in the Ricote Valley. There, they formed 6 villages until 1609. The current names of these villages are Abaran, Blanca, Ajos, Ricote, Uli and Villanueva. The village of Blanca was in the 17th century the main village of the Ricote Valley. The first time Blanca appeared in a document is from the year 1281 when Sancho, the son of King Alfonso the Wise, offered to the Order of Santiago this village offered as a donation. The name of Blanca was that time Negra, translated into English as black. The name of the first mayor, in documents found in 1303, is that of Garcia Vizcarra, as commander of the Castle of Negra during the war between Todmir, the former name of Murcia province, and Valencia. This war raged between 1296 and 1304, and the Castle of Negra at that time played an important role. The last time the name appears in documents Negra is the year 1315, and the first time we called Blanca, in Dutch white, come in the year 1383. Nobody knew when the change of name took place. However, in my thesis in 2008 I am trying to prove that the name Blanca descendants from Queen Blanche of Bourbon, who in 1353 married the Spanish king Cruel Peter. This king left his wife already after 3 days in the lurch and rather lived with his beloved Maria de Padilla. His stepbrother Fadrique, as master of the Order of Santiago, defended in the civil war Queen Blanche of Bourbon. However, in 1358 Cruel Peter gave instructions to kill him in Sevilla. They also killed the commander of Ricote, who fought together with Fadrique for the rights of Queen Blanca of Bourbon. Between 1354 and 1358, Fadrique occasionally was in the Ricote Valley, and it seems that the name of Negra changed to that one of Blanca, as a tribute to Queen Blanca of Bourbon, for whom the Orden de Santiago fought for years. In 1501 the Muslims of Blanca converted to Catholicism, and so they were called New Christians. In 1505 the Mosque of Blanca converted into a Catholic church, and an official priest was appointed for the new Christians to teach them the Catholic faith. That was not done in the right way, because years later we see in 1562 that at least 20 new Christians were in the prison of Blanca. 2 of them were burned alive, due to the Inquisition processes. Most of the other 18 new Christians completely lost their belongings as payment for the various inquisitive processes. The church appointed around 1565 a Catholic priest from a baron to avoid repetition of the same. This priest came from a Muslim family and spoke Arabic. In 1567, Philip II promulgated a new law. As from that time, the inhabitants of Blanca could not speak Arabic anymore. Besides that, it was forbidden to dress differently, and they also had to renounce Islamic traditions at weddings. This soon led to a war between the Moriscoes from the Kingdom of Granada and Philip II, and so at least 60,000 Moriscoes were killed. The subsequent peace was of a short time, because on April 9, 1609, the same day, an important one given the requisite troops, the 12-year truce with the Netherlands, was signed on the initiative of the Royal Council. It was also decided that all Moriscoes had to abandon the country. The mass deportation of the baptized Muslims covered 3% of the total Spanish population, from 250,000 to 300,000 people of a total of 8 to 9 million people. Each kingdom had individually to ensure that the deportation was arranged. It started at first in Valencia on 22 August 1609. This was followed on May 29, 1610 by Aragon and Castile during the same year. The entire process lasted a total of approximately 5 years, from 1609 to 1614. Friday Moriscoes upset came in their new home ports. They were North Africa, France, Italy and the Ottoman Empire. Some also experienced it as a religious liberation, and, on the one hand, they experienced in the Islamic countries brotherhood. However, on the other hand, they had major difficulties in adapting, and even they came in contact with hostilities. The inhabitants of the villages in the Ricote Valley protested intensively and managed to postpone the eviction until 1613. Blanca was with 1,000 inhabitants, today 6,000, the main town in the Ricote Valley. Although they were baptized before 1502 and were entitled to the title of New Christians, they were suddenly in 1613 also unlawful, dubbed as Moriscoes. This great injustice resulted in early December of 1613 that Madrid announced that also the Moriscoes of the Ricote Valley had to leave the country. This led to haunting situations where the residents of Blanca were weeping and directed themselves to the Catholic bishop in Murcia to avoid expulsion. Despite all the goodwill of the Catholic Church in Murcia, who stood for the residents of the Ricote Valley, the deportation took place anyway. The reason given for this deportation was, strangely enough, on the basis of national security. On December 13, 1613 the date finally came. About 75% of the population of the Ricote Valley, including Blanca, walked on foot to the port of Cartagena to be embarked there. Some of the 1,000 inhabitants of Blanca had withdrawn to the high mountains to escape from the deportation. The shipment finally took place in January 1614. In those 3 weeks that the residents of Blanca and their children stayed in Cartagena, different elders succeeded to marry their daughters to Christians, in order to avoid deportation. In this way, we see about 20 marriages between the daughters of the new Christians of Blanca and male Christians of other regions. Only the women were willing to marry in that way. I could not find marriages of new Christians to Christian women. That was really not in the nature of these former Moors of Blanca, some of which even had 2 or 3 Moorish women before 1580. Thanks to the baptism and marriage registers of the 16th and 17th centuries, I could see that many new Christians of Blanca then came back after 10 till 15 years. In this way, eventually 45% of the former inhabitants in Blanca and the Ricote Valley could continue to live in their territories. The fact that we still possess in Blanca all the baptism, wedding and death registers can be regarded as something unique. Due to the Spanish Civil War, 1936 till 1939, a lot of records had been destroyed or simply burned. By the time, the former Moorish population mingled slowly with the Christians. Against the mountainside, we see two large pillars that served as an entrance to the Moorish Castle. We note further that it was not easy to come in that entrance, which was needed to protect the castle against possible enemies. If we look well, we see on the mountainside two old paths that were used by the Moors to walk upwards. Water was not in the castle, and so they had to carry water from the river to the castle. The castle was built on a strategic point in order to protect it as good as possible against future invaders. Near the castle, we will still see a guard post that was there before the building of the castle, probably dating from the 10th century. The castle of Blanca stood via smoke signals in contact with the castle in Caesar, Ajos and Ricote. The Moorish castle dates from the 12th century and was probably built during the reign of Muhammad ibn Mardanis, also called King Wolf, who lived between 1124 and 1172. Blanca has with this old quarter, which you see here in the film, a unique attraction in the province of Murcia. Nowhere in the province of Murcia is another old Morisco neighborhood to find. In the foreground on a distance, we see a former granary in the hamlet Darax, exactly between the villages of Baron and Blanca. It is the only Moorish granary that is known in Spain. Totally on top of the mountain, this rectangular granary was divided into several areas where grain was stored. The granary had a guard, because it was a holy place, and enemies could not enter there. We saw the same phenomenon in the Catholic Church of Blanca, in the 16th century. If someone got into trouble with the law, he quickly ran into the church, and there, the soldiers could not get anyone from the church, because that was a holy place. Today Blanca is one of the most pious villages in the province of Murcia. Finally, we see the Virgin Blanca, White Virgin, on a beautiful lookout with a magnificent view over the whole region.